Start in about 1 minute. Hello everybody and welcome to today's Ask the Expert session. It's our community-based webinar series around Adobe Experience Manager. I'm Scott McDonald, the AEM Community Manager and your host for today's session. Today we have Lokesh, a top AEM community member that will present the session. Please note that this is a public knowledge transfer session and we have partners, customers, and Adobe internal people within the audience. For upcoming and recently recorded presentations, please visit the Experience League page. Before we start, let me share some information about this webinar. This session will last for approximately 1 hour, and that includes a question and answer session at the end. If you have questions during the session, please post them into the questions pod and we will get to them during the Q&A session. After the Q&A and to conclude the session, we'd like to get your feedback regarding today's session. So note that the presenter slides can be downloaded from the resource pod in the bottom left. The recording will be posted on an Experience League once available. So before we start, I'd like to draw your attention to the Experience League and our new Business Essentials, which you can find on the site. Business Essentials are a collection of content intended to get you up and running on Experience Manager. To see Business Essentials, please go to the guided learning section of Experience League and fill in your profile. So Lokesh, are you ready?
Yes, Scott.
Okay.
All right. So before starting, I just want to make sure I am audible perfectly.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Greetings to everyone, and thanks for joining the Ask the Expert session. So let me share. Is my screen visible?
No,
Lokesh, you would.
Yeah, there we go.
All right.
Yes, now we can see your screen.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining this session. Myself, Lokesh from TA Digital, and I'll be going through the concept of QueryBuilder within AEM, QueryBuilder and APIs, and some of the customizations that we can do and how to do that, and some points around how can we debug the queries and start learning about it. I have a small examples to demo for you guys and hope that will be helpful at the end of the session. And definitely we will open up for Q&A if time permits. I'll try to provide the time as much as possible and then answer your questions if any. Now, getting started, most of us, all of us know that every database or a data or the storage which stores the data would in some way or the other needs queries to get the data back, fetch the data and use it. So the queries is very important wherever we talk about data or content for that matter. So when it comes to the AEM, we know that AEM uses JCR or Oak, Apache Oak, which is more in terms of the tree hierarchy structure. And Oak engine supports multiple languages. I mentioned there is like XPath, which is mainly recommended, and it also supports SQL2, JCOM, and things like that. So there is SQL which is deprecated, obviously. So with these different languages, we can actually query Oak, data from Oak. Now, when we know that for a data, we need to have a query. So what is a query builder, right? The query builder is nothing but it's a kind of a API service which is exposed as an API for creating those or building those queries so that we can find our data efficiently within the repository, the JCR. and it could be straight, it could be directly get queries, or it could be a filter queries. It could be of any sort of queries. So the APIs which exposes for us to consume or retrieve the data is called as a QueryBuilder framework, which is being written by Adobe. The quick facts about the framework. The QueryBuilder itself, just now we spoke about there are multiple languages of the query, we can actually query OAP. So QueryBuilder uses the XPath expressions to build the queries, right? And for every query, most of the times we may need some kind of the constraints, like for example, give me a product or give me a TV which is of brand Samsung or the brand LG, right? So where we give a clause of where and conditions like that. So some of those constraints in the queries are expressed as predicates for QueryBuilder. So we call it as predicates. And for every, there could be multiple different predicates that are available, and each predicate are executed or evaluated by a predicate evaluator. So the implementation of how that constraint should be evaluated is being written in each of those predicate evaluators, and we will definitely talk more about it. So this is to give you a kind of a high level the terms that would be that we will be talking during this session. Then coming to the API level, so the QueryBuilder itself is a REST API, which we can actually execute through the HTTPs, and also it is the response of these APIs will be could be in JSON format, or it could be a HTTP response as well. Now coming to the query itself. So the main thing is called the predicates. So we spoke about what the predicate is all about, right? So every query is basically built on multiple predicates, and a predicate is nothing but a kind of a key. If you are known about one of these the languages, so we usually build list maps and things like that. So this is nothing but like the data model object, which is from parameter map. So it will be in a key value pair. So we will provide these predicates in the format of key value, and then construct the queries to the database. And then when it comes to the predicate evaluator, the evaluator itself is an interface. So we can implement n number of evaluators for the predicates what we want. So there are many evaluators already available out of the box. Examples like a full text evaluator, path predicate evaluator, date range predicate evaluator. There are a whole bunch of it. So I'll show you the console where you guys can find all the available evaluators. And if you want to write our own evaluators, what are the things that we have to do? So as I said before, each of these evaluator will execute for a particular or certain type of predicates. When we include a certain predicate in a query, that particular implementation or the evaluator will be executed. An evaluator uses XPaths or the filtering for evaluation. There are two different types of evaluation that it can do. It could be an XPath evaluation, or it could be a filter-based evaluation. And XPath is always preferred because of a better performance. So most of it, as much as possible, we'll have to keep our predicates as the XPath evaluation over the filtering evaluation. I've also mentioned some of the the references where you guys can read through more, or understand. If you guys want to understand more, there's a link, in the deck. You guys can definitely go through it. So how does the structure of the query itself would be? We are talking about predicates, we are talking about predicate evaluator. So probably some of those theoretically now you guys probably know those terms. Let's see visually how the structure of a query would be. As I said, the predicate would be in a format of a key and a value, pair, right? So on a basic level, it will be like key, the path is equal to /content. So it's a key and a value. So on all the keys are actually the predicates, the path, the property, and then the order by. All of these are a type of a predicate. When it comes to each predicate can have multiple operations that could be done. So for example, property has a value as an attribute or a property or a parameter, and it also have a parameter called operations. So anything another kind of an attribute that predicate has would be termed as parameter. And for each of these predicates, you will assign a value to it, so that the query will understand what is the value that it needs to search or fetch from the repository. So as I said, there are multiple predicates. Some of the standard predicates I mentioned, and I'll quickly on a high level tell what each predicates are used or why each predicates are used. The first predicate, which is basic as a path. The path predicate is used basically to say what is my hierarchy, or what is my base, the root that I need to start my query under. It could be, so basically that particular path and under. So this has multiple parameters to it. For example, it has self, which means it searches the subtree including the main tree from the given path. And then it will be if you say exact is equal to true, which means it will only do only for that particular exact path, and it will not take for the descendants or the children's. And similarly, you have other the parameters that you can do. Then the second predicate is a type predicate. The type predicate is if you want to search a content of a particular type. It could be I want to search within the type of, let's say, what do you say, a resource type, right? I want to get me a content which belongs to the resource type is equal to whatever it is, or it could be the last modified, or it could be some node type. So the page, CQ page. So whatever a particular type, if you want to restrict our search or a query to that type, then we will use a type predicate. Full text is irrespective of everything. It will search across all the content or the repository, and it just finds that the text whatever we give. Then it comes to the property. We understand from the JCR level what the properties are. Every CQ tags, JCR title, all of these are the properties. So the property, if you want to search for a particular property, so you will say we will use a property as a predicate, and then we will have, okay, I want property is equal to JCR title, but what should be the value of that property? So then we will say property dot value is equal to whatever the term that we need to search within the JCR title. Similarly, it has I can mention the depth to say should I go to the child level of properties or not, and things like that. That's just the kind of a standard property predicates, right? So there are certain predicates where we would like to kind of organize my search results. For example, group or it could be order by. Basically, let's say I get some 100 results. I want to order ascending, ascending or a descending, or based on a date, or maybe certain path or a property, basically. So for that we will use order by. Or if I want to merge the two results, then I will use a group with or an AND conditions. So if at all, if I want to organize some of these my search results, I use the organizing predicates. I mean, in the sense, the organizing predicates is not something standard, but I try to kind of, to understand better, to differentiate the predicates, when to use what. I've kind of, given that name. Then these are some of, I would say it as a, if I want to refine some of my, the search results, then I will use these predicates. So let's say, for example, I want to have some of the facets defined, or I want to limit my results to a particular number, or I want to get the entire, whatever the number of results. So I use hits is equal to full. Or if I want to limit the number of results, then I say p.limit. Or if I want to get the results, let's say I have 100 results which I got, but I want to get the result from the 10th result. I don't want the first 10 results. So then I will put a p.offset is equal to 10. So I get the, whatever the result I get is from the node of the 10th. So I'll try to show the examples of most of these predicates, if not everything, so that you guys will understand the how these predicates works, and what is the impact of these predicates for this within the search results. So on a high level, these are the different predicates that we have out of the box. Now we understand what is a query builder, how the queries are built. Now let's try to understand how the query execution happens. So this is how internally a query or Oak engine will execute a query, right? Let's say the query builder is a service that we understand. So let's say if we don't have a query builder, this is how the any query will execute within the query engine, or basically a JCR query will parse the query, then get the indexes, and that's why we say indexing any of the properties is very important, because that will directly impact the performance of the response of the query. Then finally get the results from the index. Then if there are any predicates that are available, it applies those filters and finally throws the the results. Now this is all available within the Oak query engine. This is what the query engine does within the Oak. But the query builder is written outside of it to actually call these the query engine. What it does is, we know that query builder uses the XPath, but when it sends that query, the XPath query, into the query engine, it converts the XPath expression into an SQL2, and that SQL2 is what gets executed within the query engine. So when the SQL2 queries are executing, it will parse the queries, basically divide the queries accordingly and it gets the indexes that is required, whatever the properties that we have used or mentioned, and then the results are fetched. So there is definitely there is an explain query, the console in AEM. If you guys have any, if you guys want to understand how the query gets executed, or where the query could be the slow and things like that, so that console will help you guys. I'll show that console as well, where we can go and try to understand the query execution and things like that. And if you want to improve the query, what are the areas that we can improve in that query? All right. Hope now we understood the concept of a query builder and how the query builder could be written, and then how it gets executed. But now, how do we even do it? There's multiple ways of I can execute this query. So as I said, it is an HTTP, it's a REST API. So I can definitely write an API. But also there's a very important the console which the AEM provides is a query debugger itself. Even before I write my services, using the APIs. If I want to quickly understand what will be my results would be, am I getting the right results for the query what I'm expecting, right, or writing? So for that, quickly, you don't have to write all the services and things. Go here in the query debug tool. We understand how to write the quick predicates, key value pairs. We start writing, search it, we get the results immediately. If I see the right results that is coming up, then I can quickly convert that into the servers and expose that in our application, right? So this will be more in terms of if I want to quickly test my query before I expose it as a service, or before I write a service, I can very well do this. So QueryBuilder API itself. So basically, QueryBuilder is under the COM-DAY-CQ search and is an interface, and mainly for writing the API. So this is what we have to do. So first we should get the session, and then finally, once we have a session, then we have a query builder, that what we are using, .createQuery. The .createQuery is the method that we need to use. And the createQuery method takes two parameters. One is the map. The map is nothing but the predicates, and then the session itself. And finally, once you have that query created, you can execute the query or get results of the query and then assign it to a search results. Once you have a search results object, then we can eventually parse through that search result object and then get all the data that we will anyway see how to get that. And key value map, how do I create the map, right? So it's nothing but I have a hash map, and then I keep adding or putting those key value pairs into those maps, and finally build it. So either I can do a request, or I can create the map using a request object, or I can create with a predicate group map. So there are two ways of creating a key value map. And this is a predicate group itself. If I want to, instead of adding a multiple, individually the key values, I can also group the predicates as shown here. For that, I need to create a predicate group. Then I will add all the predicates that I want to group together into one group, and then create a query. In this case, instead of map, I'll pass the group and then the session, and eventually your results would be the same. So there are different ways of creating a query and execute or getting the results, and pretty much whatever is comfortable, we can try to get that based on how we are getting those the predicates. This is a quick example. So this is exactly what from the code itself. So we will get the session, and finally we will have the predicates, and then we will have the query builder and create queries and then execute. Once we have the search results, there is something called the hits. So we can loop through the hits and then try to get all the results and then display the results. All right, so let's quickly jump on to the demo. Before going to the demo, I will like to show a couple of the articles that are available within AEM, so which would be definitely helpful. So one is QueryBuilder API. Here it talks about all the sample things that you guys wanted. So definitely a good article. If you want to understand more on the APIs itself, QueryBuilder APIs, you have these QueryBuilder APIs. You can understand how they create query with multiple things that you can create. Then the predicate evaluator itself. So this talks about all the implementations that we have that is already there. So you can pretty much go through each of those. and then finally what the predicate itself, right? So this, if you guys, it's not a big talk, so it will help you guys to understand what are the different methods available, what are the different evaluators available within the query builders. And this is on the search results. As I said, once we execute the query, we assign it into the search results object. So in the search results object, we have multiple things. For example, get hits. Get hits is nothing but that is the object which will hold your list of the results. So we will kind of loop through this list and then execute and then display all the things. And if you want to understand what is my total matches, if there are any facets, or if the results, if I've set a limit, let's say for example I set p dot limit is equal to 10, but my entire result could be 100, but I would have got only 10. If that is the case, what it also send a boolean value is has more is equal to true, which means it's not only 10 results, but you also have the next. So you can very well go get the next. So these are helps in terms of trying to, if you want to have those paginations created for, if you want to limit your queries for a particular number, in those cases you can very much use that. All right. So now coming back to here, I don't know how to move this. All right, so not a problem. So we should be able to get it. So this is a query builder, the console what I was talking about. So this is very, very helpful. You can understand pretty much everything of a query builder in this console. So let's try to do it, right? The first thing is, let's say for example, I have an oak, so I want to get all the results which is of type page, right? I want to get number of pages which is there in the repository. So simply what I do is type is equal to CQ colon page and then search. If you see here, it gives me the results. Couple of things that we may have to understand here is to give me all the results, but be sure there is 1661 number of results, and it took only 0.03 seconds because it is only, we have added only one predicate, so it goes directly get everything. But it is not showing all of those hits, right? So we'll get back to that later. But by default, if it's not mentioned anything, it will give us only the first 10 results. And the good thing about this here is there is a couple of links within here where you can, if you want to understand from the JSON perspective, HTML, or to locate within the CRXTE, we can very much do that. So before going there, let me say now I have this type, but I don't want these settings and things like that. That is of probably not a useful page for me. So now what I want to do is I want to say path is equal to /content /vdetail, because I know this is where my website is and I want to get all the pages within my website. If I click on search, now I get all the pages, which is a valid page, actually an application page, it's not the other type, because I can create like experience fragment or any other things also as a CQ page, so within the repository, which probably of no use for me, right? So now when it comes here, so if you go click on a HTML, it opens up the HTML. I can very well see these the pages. Similarly, if I go look at the JSON, I get the JSON of the page. Of course, we can add the limiters if I want to go in depth. If I want to go to the level of 2, I just do the 2, and then it gives me more data about the JSON. Now again, if I want to locate where is this in CRXT, I can open up the CRXT, opens up, and then it shows me that particular the path. So quickly, it just helps me to navigate, the first thing. The second thing, if you look at it, this is the XPath query that is executed. Another point here is also, we said the multiple ways, right? So one is this is the way where we can execute. The other one is directly I can pass it via HTTP request. If at all, if you want to pass it via HTTP request and get the response in JSON, this is your parameter for the HTTP. If you directly click on this link and execute, this execute basically whatever we see here is what will be added at the end of the JSON part. And if you see, you will see the results, the same result, whatever you're seeing here as a JSON format. So if this is what I was trying to tell you guys, the hits is important. The hits is the one which holds the list of your results. Okay, and the more is false, the total is 491, the results it's showing is 10. So, and the status success is equal to true. If we can in our query, I mean, whenever I'm writing my service, I can utilize some of these things and do my logics based on that. But at the end of the day, now with this, we understand, how I can write or execute a query directly within the HTTP request. So, and then get the JSON format with parameters. So I can put all my constraints or predicates here within as a parameter of the HTTP request, send it, get the JSON response back. Now we'll go back to the REST API a little later and then understand how to write those REST APIs. But let's try to explore a little more on some of the other predicates what we have. So let's say now when it comes to here, I see there is before, if I want to see all the 491 results, how do I do it? By default, it is 10. So if I say p limit is equal to 100 and search, it gives me 100 results, but it's still, I don't say everything, right? So I can very well say 491, but sometimes I may not know how many results are there. So simply if I say -1, which means I don't say, I'm not setting any limit, then it gives me the results of all, whatever the number it is, it gives me the entire results. So now it is giving me 491 pages entirely, right? So this is where the p limit or the filtering, what I was trying to say in the presentation, that comes here. Now I don't want to do this, so let's say I will go back to 10. But I want to get the results from the 10th, right? I don't want to get from the 0. So now if I say p dot offset is equal to 10 and execute, see here we have Western Australia, and click here. Now I don't see that Western Australia. So I see the open orders, which is nothing but it is pulling me the result after the 10th result, and which is means like if you see the index of 0 to 100, first time I get 0 to 10, now I'm offsetting 10. So my starting point becomes the 10, and from there it fetches me the 10 more results. So it is actually ideally from the 11th to 20th is the result what I'm getting it here. So I know similarly I can set the offset and limits and then play around with what results I want and things like that. Or if I want to limit for 100, so what happens is it will give me the 100 results from the 10th result, right, and so on. So we can pretty much keep on adding some of these things. Now go back here. Now I get here. So now I don't want all of these the entire pages, but I'm looking for a particular a property or a type, right? So let's say for example, if I come here, I know this page uses or these pages uses a CQ template with this value. So I want to get all the pages which uses this template only, and I don't want any other pages. So what I can do is property is equal to CQ template. Okay, so see here, this is what a property I'm giving, and then property dot value is equal to whatever the value I want for the property. Now let's see how that comes up. Oh, I don't have any results. Let's see what is the mistake. Property, EQ template, and well, it should. Now this is why we need property.value. Fair enough. So the missing here is actually the CQ template is not available directly here in this, but it is available under the JCR content. So now what actually should be done is content/CQ template. If I click on here, now I get only the pages which has this property and this value. So this is one of the type of the predicates. So this is called as a property predicate. So if you look at this here, it also have a link to available predicates, right? It's pretty simple. So if you click here, it gives me all the different types of predicates that are available out of the box, like tagging, search. I know it's not like complete user friendly, but if you go inside, you will know that title predicates, then language predicate, then this is resource no case, this is date comparison predicate, and things like that. So there are tons of predicates that you already have here. Now let's let me go. Let's try to understand this part of it, right? So let's say I want results with under the VDetail for the property JCR title and the value Arctic. So I don't have any, because it is trying to search under here. But let's say I want to, go to the depth of 2. So which means go to the next level of nodes and up to the level of depth 2 and see if I have anything. I don't have anything. Let's say I say VDetail. I want to see if there is any title with VDetail. I get no. For hopefully all right, so now it gets me a results. So basically I don't have anything with a title VDetail under the path which I gave, but it is there under without the path in a higher level. So now I get the title. So basically I can control the depth to look at. If I say depth 2, it gives me only 6 results because it goes on to only to the 2 level lower. But when I go to the little more depth, I will find more results. So which I found 9. So if you want to go iterate over if there is any child pages under a given path, and if you want to go to the n number of levels, we will use a depth and then mention the value over there. And of course there is a date range. For example, let me take this. I'm trying to copy paste only to make sure I don't do any typing mistake or in terms of time as well. So here what it says here is again we have already seen till here, so it gets me all the results, which is the pages, which is of type is equal to CQ page. Now I'm adding another constraint, which means the date range property. So what I'm trying to say is, for a date range, there is a property, and the property is last modified. So look up for the last modified property, and I'm saying lower bound. Lower bound is nothing but it should be minimum of the last modified should be this particular date. If I see here, I get these things, which is of which is last modified is 7 or greater than that. Let's say I know for a fact that I've made one change at around 9, and if I see I have only 2, so which means the minimum last modified date should be 9. If it's anything lesser than that, I don't care. So I want 9, and from there anything which is modified. So now I get the results. So that's how I use some of this date range, the property. And similarly, there's tons of things, right? So I can say order by last modified, right? If I go back here, if I search, so I get this, but this is modified with the start date. Or the last modified with the descending order. So how can I quickly get this? If I go here, new window. If you see here, this is 9th, and then 8th. So this is in the descending order, which is what I'm getting the results. So I am actually getting the latest modified file in the descending order for a particular thing. If I want to do a full text search within this result, so I will just say full text is equal to, let me see if I want to do Australia. Now I see only 3 results which has the Australia as a text within the given template, basically given template and given path. So as I say, I can keep on adding the predicates, or I can reduce the predicates based on what results I'm trying to look out for. And there is another thing called excerpt equals true, which will give me the basic, some kind of a summary of that page, which will also help us to show directly those excerpts in my search results. So I think we have pretty much gone through a lot of these things, but of course, if you want to understand more about these different, the query build, you also have an example here for sure. But if you want to again see what are the different things, you can very well see this query builder. There's definitely all of these examples mentioned. The key thing here is to understand what are the predicates available and what predicates to use when and for what results. That will be very key, and then to understand. There is also within the ACS commons, the commons we have. If you want to go, you have all the predicates that has been mentioned, so you can pretty much use everything. Now coming to the API, let me show you guys. One thing here. So this is the API. So I'm not writing the whole service. I'm just using a AEM footer to quickly execute my the service. So here, if you see, what I'm trying here is I get the session. We should not use administrative resource resolver, but this is again as an example. I've just taken this, but we should always use the service user and then adapt the session or create the session using that service user. And once I do that, I create a map, and I keep on adding these the predicates, whatever we saw in the query. Let's say I got what I want, the results. Now just put that as a key value map here, and finally you say builder.create query, add this map, give the session, so it executes the results. Once I get the result, so couple of things I get. So one is how many hits I have, right? So I can say result.getHits.size, and then what is the total matches, and is there any offset? And once I can get whatever the data I want, and once I have the results, I will say I loop through that get hits, because I know the list of the results is under hits, and then I am trying to get the path, and then I'm just putting the into the get in the response writer, just to see the results here. So pretty much here we can change everything very similar to that. Let's say if I say limit is equal to 100 and then run the code, I get 100 results. If I want to change instead of gloves, if I want to change as Australia, which I tried again, let's see if I do this, I get the 3 results, whatever I got there. So this is, if I'll come here and write these services. Once I know I have got my query and I get my query in the debugger quickly, that will actually help us a lot, rather than debugging in the code. I mean, writing a service first and then executing it, and if we are not seeing the result, what's happening, things like that. Rather prepare a query in the debugger, see your results is coming, then quickly convert it into a service. All right, I think pretty much done. And one more thing, let's see, go back to here. I think now we saw a demo to how do we use different consoles, how do I get the results or execute the results in different ways. One is HTTP request via the parameters or using the REST APIs. Now I want to write my own predicates, right, or evaluators. How can I do it? So we know there are 2 types of predicate evaluator. One is the XPath type and the other one is a filtering type. So if I want to write my own predicate evaluator, only thing what we have to do is we need to extend called abstract predicate evaluator. Whenever you abstract predicate evaluator, irrespective of what type of predicates you are creating, there are 3 the methods that we need to override. If I'm creating an XPath predicate, I have to override XPath expression and write my logic. And there are 2 methods, can XPath and can filter. Here, as I'm writing a XPath predicate, I want to make sure the can XPath is returned true while the can filter is returned false. Whereas in the filtering predicate, if I'm writing a filtering predicate, instead of get XPath expression, I need to override includes. And here these 2, the XPath becomes false, whereas the filter, can filter, becomes true. So once we do this, so your predicate evaluators are ready, and then we can pretty much use those evaluators within our queries. So only thing is we'll have to keep in mind here, you need to enable or return true based on what predicate you're writing, and then you will have to override a different methods based on what type of predicates you are writing. Coming to the debug, couple of things we need to enable. If at all, if the XPath or the queries are not logged in the logs by default, if you want to enable logging, you need to go to this Sling log, then add a new logger for this particular path, and that's when it starts executing, or it will start printing the query. Once you print the query, it will actually display this XPath query, which is shown like this. And let me show you guys that. So if at all, if I whatever okay, yeah. So this is the query, right? So this is what it prints. So this will not be printing by default unless we enable that logger in the Sling logs. So essentially, this is the query. What we can do is, this is a URL. This is kind of the parameter or a URL based query, right? I don't understand this pretty much. So what I can do is I can take this query, go here. Let's say if I'm writing a service first and not the query debugger tool. So now what I can do is I can go here. I can come to the query builder, put this here, and then say query is given as a URL, and then search. It automatically converts into the XPath. Now I clearly know what is my predicates are. So if I want to quickly change it, I can change it here. So that will help us to debug or understand our query a lot more. Or you can also go to the where's that? Diagnosis, query performance, and here explain query. So even here I can write based on whatever it is. I can, the query builder, I can do this. Oh. If I go back to this, explain. So this gives me the entire explanation of the query, pretty much. So what are the indexes that is used? If there is no indexes, it will tell that there is no index. Then how does it executes, and there are certain logs. If you guys go through it, it exactly talks about each of these events or the jobs that gets executed for executing this query. Well, yeah, I think this is definitely a good thing, and because I'm in this thing, so you can also look at some of the popular queries that is executing in your entire instance, and what is the duration, that average duration it takes for each of those the queries. And if there are any slow queries, it will automatically show here as a warning. So if you see any of the queries here in the slow queries, which means it needs an attention, you guys can go ahead, quickly take the query, put here, understand what is happening, and try to optimize that query. So unless if you are not seeing any query here, the instance are, basically all the queries, whatever you guys have used within the application should be good. Okay, I think I pretty much explained this. Finally, this is how the JSON, which I told we can do, write a JSON and then append the URL query as a parameter. Then we will directly get this as JSON. If at all, if I want to run a query directly from a front end, right, Ajax way, or maybe in the whatever it is, if I want to directly put the query in my HTTP, then I will do it this way instead of calling a servlet or a service from the backend. That's all I have for today. Hope it was useful, and we have some time, and I open up for QA.
Hey, Lokesh, that was an excellent presentation. So now we're into the Q&A phase, so I'll read the questions and then you can answer them. So first question is from Dan. He asks, does full text search not need some kind of non-out-of-the-box indexing? He said he's tried it without success. So what are your thoughts there?
Oh yeah, so basically full text search needs, especially with Oak, all the indexes are not created out of the box. by default. We will have to create, let's say, most of these the standard properties like title, the CQ page, some of those properties are indexed. But if at all, if we are creating our own properties, let's say I create my own property called title, description for these components, right? And the content will be stored within those properties. Most of those properties, what we create, we are responsible to make it indexing. So we have to make sure the indexes are created for those. Otherwise, definitely full text search will have an impact. And that's where, we can use those explain query or slow queries, understand what is the response time, why it is taking time, and then try to optimize those things.
Okay, great. Next question. What exactly is JCR score, and how does AEM define JCR score?
JCR score, that's an interesting question. So I will have to come back on that.
Okay, we can send me a message and then we'll post it on the forums.
Scott, I shared the answers on this question, so Yatharth may want to read that as well.
Okay, great. I'll come back to that one. I just want to get to all the ones in black. So if QueryBuilder converts XPath and Oak Engine converts XPath to SQL 2, shouldn't we be using SQL 2 for better performance?
No, actually it is optimized internally. So as we said, XPath is a better one. So essentially the query builder will use it. If at all, if I want to use the APIs, that automatically uses that the optimized way. It's pretty simple to do it. So that's why it takes care of that. We don't have to worry about writing our own SQL tools. Rather, we can quickly use those predicates and things like that.
But if somebody's comfortable writing SQL.
Oh yeah, we can definitely use SQL too as well. Yeah. Where we were not using QueryBuilder API, rather we're directly executing using the query engine.
So here's one I've seen in the AEM forums from time to time. It's an interesting one. It's how do we search inside a given file? So for example, say you upload a PDF. Can you write queries on the text inside a given PDF?
Unless we have extracted that content, the PDF content, and then stored as the property in one of the property, then yes. Otherwise, I don't think so. It will go inside the file, binary file itself, and searches for it. But I think that there is a way where you guys can write whenever somebody uploads a PDF. You can some APIs are available to extract those contents, put it in a JCR node. If that is available, then yes.
So what you're basically saying is write a custom service that knows how to go through the PDF, extract certain key points there, and then write it as properties, so then they could query against those properties. That makes sense.
Yeah.
How can we add an index to a query? So I guess what they're asking is what's best practice around indexing and using QueryBuilder API?
Indexing itself is a big topic by itself. What I can recommend is there is a good documentation around Oak queries and indexing itself, which is available in the AEM Adobe site. I've also mentioned that in the PPT, so definitely that would give you guys a better understanding of what are the different how can I index it, what are the different configurations available indexes, and what are some of the key things that we need to understand while indexing.
I know that our sister program GEMS has done a session on indexing, so I recommend if anybody's interested in that, go to the GEMS playback page and then take a look at the indexing one. That's a very useful one. We may be running an indexing one later on this year, since we'll probably do it around AEM 6.5 later on this year. I know that's always a hot topic.
Yeah, indexing itself is a big thing.
Okay, next question. JCR queries and indexes, and more indexes, are two sides of the same coin. JCR needs to be backed by either out of the box or custom indexes to be be performance. If I created a complex JCR query, how do I determine how to create the appropriate index for it? Should I extend out-of-the-box indexes or rather create a custom one? So this is more about the indexing. So once again, I think take a look at that GEM session, and Locast just kind of talked about indexing just a second ago. Here's a good one. Key total is super important for performance, as without seeing this parameter, the results are queried and then fully parsed to get the actual number of results. P total only guesses the number of results and thus is far more performance. Is this correct?
Yeah, there's something called guess total, which actually will not get us the entire result, but it gives us the kind of a let's say it says 100 plus or 200 plus kind of a thing. It gives us an idea that there is more results, but it gives a less one. So it depends on how are we creating these in the front end. If you want to get, if you are getting 10,000 of results, probably we may not want to fetch all of that. Then definitely key total or the guess total. Some of these things will be helpful.
Excellent. So here's a question on what's a better approach: Sling query, specifying the query, versus QueryBuilder API in predicates.
Sling query, I don't understand. So is it like directly we are talking about the SQL2 queries?
I assume it's just Sling query, specifying the query. So
yeah, I think it's more of a writing a directly SQL2. I think we already told. So we can use both of them, but if you want to use some of these see, if I'm writing my own SQL2 query, then essentially if I'm a DB guy, it will have its own, the format and the way it has to be written. If you understand, we can definitely do that. But otherwise, writing this in the XPath is kind of a key value map, which will be very simple, and the predicates are taken care in terms of making it more optimized. So we can use the query builder. It's like just a wrapper on top of the query engine. So which essentially we can use any one of them.
How can I exclude properties from being returned in a JCR full text search?
Exclude. I think that is something which we need to write a couple of, maybe a combined query. It's little, definitely we need to go a little deeper. We can probably come up with some examples around it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to skip the ones that appear to have been answered by Caltech. How to create a query like group 1 minus group 2 values. So almost like a concatenated one.
What's the question again, Scott?
How to add a query. How to create a query like group 1 minus group 2 values.
It's group, see, there is only and or. So if it is group 1 minus group 2, then essentially we may have to write 2 queries as a final, and then kind of handle it with the results what we get. I will definitely let you guys know if there is any optimized other than better way to do it.
Okay. What is the best recommended way to find 2 child resources under a specific path in Query Debugger? The child nodes can be any hierarchy. For example, one resource can be at 3 levels down and the other resource can be 10 levels down. Based on the thread or condition is working, but not end condition.
If you have any specific the query with you guys, probably it would be better to put that in our forum. So definitely one of us will take a look at it and see exactly. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty difficult for us to go in depth right now and then tell you the things. Definitely feel free to put those queries in our forums community. Definitely we will take a look at it.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's almost too complex without really digging into it. Are there any AC tools and ETC available by default in CRX, or are they installed as add-ons?
Which one? Which is the tool, Scott?
They're asking about ACS tools or whether they need to be installed as add-ons.
Okay, ACS Commons, it's an add-on. So if you guys go to the ACS Commons, there's a bunch of tools that are available. You need to deploy that onto your instance. So all the tools within that will be available for you guys to use.
Okay. Here's another one. I see that it is converted to JSON. Is there an out-of-the-box solution? I'm not sure what this one is actually.
Oh yeah. So if at all, if you use that QueryBuilder.json and then put the parameter as a HTTP request, that's out of the box. So that will get you the results in JSON format.
Okay, well, we're at the top past, we're 5 minutes past, so we'll take a look at the rest of the questions and we'll post them on the forums. Kautuk, I'm turning it over to you for the last part of the session.
Sure.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Lokesh.
Thank you, Lokesh, for the wonderful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, before you log out, please fill the polling questions that are displaying on your screen. We appreciate your feedback. If there are any topics that you would like us to cover in future ATCs, please mention them in the polling questions. Thank you again for attending and for all your great questions. Have a great rest of your day.